The chamber was vast, a cathedral of crystalline spires and floating platforms that hummed with the soft, celestial energy of 1,000 civilizations working in concert. The Galactic Council's Grand Hall had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth of stars, and the quiet extinction of species too proud or too foolish to adapt. Today, it would witness something far more unusual: humanity leaving without a fight. Evan stood at the podium. He was not tall by human standards, and certainly not imposing by galactic ones. He wore a plain gray suit, no medals, no insignia, no delegation robes. Beside him, a single briefcase rested on the floor. Behind him, silence. The rest of Earth's delegation had already left the premises, quietly, efficiently, without ceremony. Their ships had departed orbit 40 minutes ago. Only Evan remained. Clara watched him from her elevated seat among the council members. She was one of the older members, a Velithari, her iridescent carapace catching the chamber's ambient light in slow, rippling waves. She had been the one to draft the banishment resolution. She had been the one who argued, passionately, for 3 full sessions, that humanity's instability was a threat to the Concord. She had secured enough votes. Barely, but enough. She had expected resistance. She had prepared for it. She had not prepared for this. The floor recognizes the human representative, the council's herald announced, its voice reverberating through translation nodes that fed into every species' native language simultaneously. Evan nodded once. "I'll be brief," he said. "I know that's not customary here, but we've got a long way to travel and I'd rather not miss the tide." A murmur moved through the chamber. No species missed tides in the vacuum of space. It was clearly a human expression. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. They still found human idiom unsettling, even after 40 years of contact. "The United Earth Assembly has reviewed the banishment resolution in its full form," Evan continued, his voice calm, almost conversational. "We find it legal under Concord Law, Article 7, Section 4, the Non-Interference Expulsion Clause. We're not contesting it." Clara's secondary eyes narrowed. Not contesting it. That was the part she hadn't expected. Humanity was supposed to contest it. They were supposed to rage. Every model she'd built, every behavioral projection her analysts had prepared, all of them predicted protest, counterproposal, negotiation, delay. Humans delayed everything. Humans argued everything. That was the problem. "What we are doing," Evan said, "is invoking the full rights afforded under that same clause." He reached down, opened the briefcase, and removed a single data chip, which he held up briefly before setting it on the podium. "This contains the formal notice of withdrawal. Signed by all member states of Earth, ratified by the Assembly, sealed with our biometric identification chain. It is, as of this moment, legally tendered. The Council acknowledges receipt," the herald said automatically. With that, Evan said, "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Concord. All trade agreements, defensive pacts, technological exchange protocols, and diplomatic access arrangements are hereby suspended pending review under our own legislature. We wish you no ill will." He picked up his briefcase. "Wait." Clara's voice cut across the chamber before she could stop herself. The acoustics carried it everywhere. Several heads turned. She hadn't meant to speak, it wasn't her turn. The chamber protocol was rigid, but something in his posture, that flat, unhurried calm, made her act. Evan paused. He turned to look up at her. "You're not going to argue?" she asked. Her translator rendered the words precisely, but even across species, something in her tone communicated what she meant. "You're not going to fight?" "No," Evan said simply. "You're not going to present a counter-resolution? Request arbitration? File an appeal with the High Conclave?" "No." Clara leaned forward. "The expulsion cuts you off from every trade lane we govern. 73% of your imported rare earth minerals come through Concord-controlled systems. Your medical research programs use shared databases hosted on Velithary servers. Your deep space relay network runs on Concord infrastructure. You'll be isolated. Evan looked at her for a long moment. Then something moved across his face, not quite a smile, but a cousin of one. Thank you for remembering all that, he said. We did too. He turned and walked toward the exit. You cannot survive without us. Clara said it louder than she intended. It wasn't a threat. It was, she realized, even as the words left her, a question disguised as a statement. A fear in the wrong grammar. Evan stopped at the chamber door. He didn't turn around immediately. When he did, there was no anger in his expression. No bitterness. Just something quiet and heavy, like a door being gently but permanently shut. Clara, he said, and every member of the council stiffened slightly, because he had used her name without title, which was either an insult or an intimacy, and no one was sure which. We were building our own mineral extraction arrays in the Kuiper Belt before we ever applied for Concord membership. We joined because it seemed efficient. Not because we needed to. He let that sit. The relay network, yes, that'll hurt for about 18 months. Then the backup systems we've been developing for the last 6 years go live. We started those the same month we received the first informal signals that this resolution was being drafted. A pause. We're human. We plan for contingencies. It's sort of our thing. He reached for the door. The medical databases, he added, almost as an afterthought, we've been building our own. It's mostly complete. The Concord databases were good, but honestly? We've been contributing more to them than we've been drawing from them for the last decade. You might feel that gap before we do. The door opened. Safe travels, Clara. Good luck with the 7th arm expansion. I hope the Concord holds together long enough to reach it. And then he was gone. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Clara sat back in her seat slowly. Around her, dozens of the galaxy's greatest minds, representatives of civilizations that had been sailing stars while humans were still chipping flint, said nothing. It was Counselor Thresh of the Breathian Collective who finally broke it. His voice was a low, resonant thing, like wind through stone corridors. Did he just? Thresh began. Yes, Clara said. Were they? Apparently. Another silence. How long, asked Ambassador Viren of the Soluan Accord, has humanity been quietly preparing to leave? Clara pulled up the files her analysts had prepared. She skimmed them now with different eyes, looking not for signs of human resistance, but for signs of human preparation. The mineral arrays. The relay backups. The medical databases. She cross-referenced the dates. Her carapace went cold. 6 years for the relays, she said slowly. The mineral operations, longer. 8, maybe 9 years. She looked up. They began contingency planning 9 years ago. The resolution was only formally proposed 4 years ago. The room was very still. They knew before we did, Thresh said. They anticipated it, Clara corrected quietly. They read the political drift. They did the math. And instead of lobbying against it, she set down the file. They built the door before we could lock it. Viren leaned forward. What happens now? Without human shipping lanes, the Carrion Passage loses its primary maintenance fleet. Without human medical contributions, our shared pathogen database loses its single largest contributor. Without. I know, Clara said. The Andovian shipyards were 40% staffed by human contractors. I know. The new generation of translation nodes runs on a human-designed compression algorithm? I know. She said it sharply enough that the chamber fell quiet again. Clara stared at the empty podium. At the small data chip sitting on it, humanity's signature on the end of an era, left behind like a polite note after a dinner party you weren't invited to in the first place. She had spent 3 years arguing that humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too chaotic for the Concord's careful order. She had not once considered what it would feel like when they agreed with her. She had not once modeled the scenario in which humanity simply left, calmly, completely, without a single backwards glance, and in doing so, revealed exactly how much of the Concord's careful order had been quietly running on human hands. The chamber began to buzz, slowly, with the sound of 100 civilizations beginning to calculate the same thing she was. The gap. The shape of what was gone. Outside, in the cold and the dark and the vast indifferent silence of space, somewhere on the long road back to a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable star, Evan sat in the back of a courier shuttle, drank something hot from a thermos, and read a book. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The absence would speak for him.